Hello, everybody. My name is Lori Wood Spears, and I'm a certified mediator and certified divorce coach specialist. And I'm here again today with my friend and former client, Miss Shannon, who's agreed to come humor me and talk with me for this hour because we enjoy talking together so much. And we've decided that we're not even going to focus on a topic. We're just going to have a genuine conversation about anything divorce related or anything else that comes to our mind. And we're just going to see where the conversation takes us. Shannon, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. Happy to be back as always.
Oh, so happy to have you. I think last podcast we left off and we had just kind of ventured into dating after divorce. And I know that that is a topic in itself. There are so many facets of that, and we can talk about what the dating pool even looks like in worst case scenario, but we'd have to throw in some positives so we don't scare the hell out of people. But before we jump in today, I wanted to go back and kind of talk about the decision to divorce.
Sure.
Because it is such a hard one. And a lot of people think about it for months, if not years, before pulling the trigger. And they live this kind of stressed out, do I, don't I, should I, shouldn't I?
Yeah.
And then the fear of what it will look like after divorce, the fear of having that conversation. I know myself personally, I thought about it for years and was on the fence. And then one day I found myself, and I can't even believe I'm saying this on a recording, thinking maybe it'd be nicer if he didn't come home. It'd just be easier. And I thought, if you're wishing that upon somebody else, you probably should get the hell out. And maybe that's your answer right then and there. And I know many people feel that way, but I felt terrible. I don't wish anybody ill.
Sure.
You know, certainly I didn't want that to happen, but I was such a chicken to I kept what ifing myself to death. And it was such a major decision because I took marriage so seriously that divorce was even more serious. And the decision to was, and you're doing that alone. You're not telling your partner, you're not getting them their input. So it's all in your own head. And it was just really difficult. But that was kind of my turning point where I thought, if I'm wishing somebody harm just so I don't have to be a brave girl or put on my big girl pants, it's probably the answer that I was looking for all along.
Yeah.
How about you? Do you remember that phase and what it took and how long you thought about it?
There's going to be some like dirty secrets that come out because
That's all right. Just should be.
Yeah. I relate with that 100% because to me I was so caught up in how it looked from the outside in.
Right.
And, both our families our parents were still married. Divorce really wasn't a big part of like our family dynamic.
So you were kind of the trendsetter in this area, which is not so necessarily,
like we had both, I think we had always said, or like when things got hard, we always said like that is not on the table. Like we don't get divorced. We're not people that get divorced. Wow. And so in your head, right, you keep thinking, well, what happens if what happens if I do get divorced? Like I'm a failure. I'm going to look, you know what I mean? Like it's like what society thinks of the people who were married, the people who were divorced, whatever it is. It just was like that sort of stain, right, of being divorced. And so I think that that's what drove so much of me wanting to stay because
no matter what.
Yeah, because it was like, it didn't matter what happened. Like I would make this work no matter what.
Because that's what you were trained to do. That's what you grew up with.
Yeah.
And no matter divorce and making the decision to divorce is so difficult anyway. And you had the added pressure that it's not acceptable in our family.
Yes.
We just don't do that. And what does it look like if I'm the first one that does? What does that say about me? That is difficult.
And so I think when things started to get really, really tough, I was also, I think, becoming self-aware of the reasons why I wanted to stay. And it really had nothing to do with still being in love or loving or whatever it was. It was like, I haven't had children yet. We just bought a house. I love my in-laws. Like it just was
everything. It was but the right reason.
Stay.
Right.
And so I think those like dirty secret thoughts that I would have was sometimes I would literally like lay in bed and I'd be crying and I would say to myself, sometimes I just wish that he would do something so unforgivable that I'd have no choice but to leave. And I literally would sit there and say, I just wish he'd cheat on me. I wish he'd have an affair. I wish he would do something because it would just be easier to leave.
It would make the decision easier.
It would make the decision easier because then it wouldn't be on me. I would have no choice but to.
And it would be acceptable in that circumstance.
Yes.
And that's interesting because I know your circumstances and we've talked about it here. There was infidelity.
Mm-hmm.
And when you were laying in bed, thinking those thoughts or
Yeah.
trying to manifest that.
Yeah.
Was that before you even were aware
Yes.
of the infidelity?
Yes.
So you, and you're not responsible for this, but they say what we think about, we bring about.
Yeah.
And so you kind of got what you wished for, but it probably didn't impact you
Oh,
the
no.
way that you thought
Yeah,
it was.
of course you're going through it and you're like, F this. Like,
Right.
this is so painful.
Right. And you still, even knowing the infidelity, still contemplated staying and
Yeah.
trying to work things out for however brief a moment it was.
Yeah.
But it's not that easy. You know, I confess that my husband started to, we had a lot of loss in our marriage. Not only were we raising a teenager that's difficult on the best of day,
Mhm.
we lost his father suddenly and unexpectedly right before we got married, like within a few days.
Yeah.
And then we lost my stepfather. My mom got breast cancer. We lost his mother. There was just so much loss. And I think after the loss of his mom, and he had always socially drank and this and that, I kind of kept him on the straight and narrow, you know, made sure we were okay. But he didn't turn in. I didn't turn in, and he turned to drinking.
Mm.
And it became a real problem. And he was, you know, what was once, I'm just going to stop at the bar and have a beer a few nights a month and then come home, turned into every night. And I told him that bar is going to be the death of our marriage. It just is.
Mhm.
And he chose to do that. And so sometimes he would come home and I think, wouldn't it just be easier if?
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my God. So for you, I mean, mine was and I just cringe every time I think about me thinking that because it's not who I am. It's not what I want. But you had similar thing because we were both too scared to pull the trigger and make a painful decision.
Yeah. Well, who can you, like you said, who can you tell that to? Nobody.
Not a person.
I've only recently started admitting that to myself so that I could share that with my sister or some of my close girlfriends of just these were the thoughts that I had early on. And I think this past weekend I was with a bunch of my girlfriends. We're drinking wine, so of course, just blah, things start to come out.
Oh yeah, it's much easier when you have liquid courage. Yes.
They're all married, they all have kids or whatever. And so I think the husband bashing, usually is a part of that or whatever. And so I think we just kind of started talking about whatever things that happened in our marriages and things that bothered us or whatever. And one of my friends had asked me when did things start kind of getting bad? And I said, the year we got married. And because I remember, and my friends had said, they said, we remember we caught a glimpse of you basically saying how hard that first year was. And there was a million different factors. It really wasn't just oh, I stopped loving him or whatever.
Right. It's never
we
that
both started
simple.
New careers.
Right.
It just, we stopped spending time together. There was a lot of pressure to start having a kid. And so, but I remember I'm thinking really that first year of marriage, it was it just went downhill from there. I had some medical stuff happening. And so that was another factor, but it was ever since that first year of marriage, it just was of course there's good times, but
sure,
it just was a steady decline.
And it's when
to think about it, for so long, you're you get to a place where there's infidelity and you're making the decision to, divorce or whatever, but you're wow, it's actually been 6 years of just crap.
Right. And it's not that one incident. And first of all, I want to just say, thank you so much because you have been so open and so brave. And I'm ashamed of having that thought. And I know that I'm not alone in that thought.
Yeah.
You had a different thought, but we all want somebody else to make the decision easier when it's so painful or when we're stuck in our own head. Because like you said, you cared about your in-laws. To the outside couple, your marriage, just like mine, looked great on paper.
Yeah.
And you don't want to let anybody into that private space that you're going in when it's not positive, nor do you want to necessarily bring about or trash the other person.
Yeah.
But it's not as simple of just, I fell out of love. It sounds like you had a lot of change. There was a lot of stress on your marriage. And a lot of people, when you're together with somebody, everybody's asking you, when are you going to get married? When are you going to tie the knot? And the minute you get married, if you're younger and marrying, especially if it's your first marriage, well, then when are the kids going to come?
Yeah.
And it's never like you can just sit in that moment without pressure.
Yeah.
So you take that outside influence, job change, maybe death of loved ones I went through, any outside stressors, and you compile that. And then if you guys don't turn into each other or find a healthy way to cope with the
Yeah.
change together, you're just in for a real shit show. I mean, you are.
Oh, it was a recipe for disaster.
Right.
But it was like trying to defy the odds, especially in the type of work that he was in. I mean, think about 50% divorce rate in society, and it's even higher with what he did for work. And so you're also trying to like prove that you're not going to be a part of that. You're not going to be that.
You're not going to be that statistic.
Yeah.
Right.
Because like it's almost like somebody basically telling you before you get married, like you're already set up for failure.
Right.
And you're like, okay, but I'll do better. We'll be better. We're stronger than that. And then so many of, his coworkers we would find getting divorced, having affairs. And so it was like,
and the norm was to do that in his line of work, not just to have this, a great marriage with no infidelity is kind of like unheard of in that they're the unicorn. And it's just so rough because you've got all this outside pressure. And then of course, people look at divorce as a failure.
Yeah.
Or they look at you with that. And it was hard from that. I'm so sorry that look that you get when people feel bad for you. So when I chose to divorce and it was amicable, and I said I spent years thinking about it. And then I was so worried about what his reaction that it would break him, and he actually handled it fine. So I didn't know that I don't think he was thinking about divorce, but it wasn't like it was so great he was wanting to try and save it.
Yeah.
But when we decided that, and after a few people looked at me with that, oh, poor you thing, or I equated it to looking at me like I was a failure. Yeah. I changed hairdressers, nail people, stopped talking to certain friends for no fault of their own, just shut myself off from the world because I didn't want to admit or share my story of what had happened because I was ashamed.
Oh, 100%.
Because there was no infidelity. Mm-hmm. There was no real reason why. It just wasn't working. We weren't happy. We chose to do different things and handle trauma different ways. And now I look back and it was the best decision for both of us.
Sure. Yeah.
He's a really great guy. But even though I made the choice and we went through it amicably, the first few months after it, all you look back and remember is the good stuff you have. And then you're freaking out because the choice you just made. I mean, there's so much to the decision.
Totally.
Do you remember, and I know that you found out you guys had tossed the D word around.
Yeah, I think even towards the end, it was like, I don't want, but I think he would like specifically say like, that's not what I want. And so it just like becomes this mind, F-U-C-K.
I was going to say you had to be really confused because what he was saying and his actions weren't necessarily lining up.
Towards the end too, there were so many inconsistencies where it was like, I was so suspicious and feel like if anything that I've learned is like that women's intuition, you listen to it and you go about it the right way with anything. But it was like, I'm so suspicious. There's just things that are not adding up. And so finally, had this big blowout fight or whatever, he left. And then there was some other stuff happened where I confronted the person that he was, without going into too much detail.
Right.
But yes, there was a moment that I unfortunately confronted them. And that's when I actually had a conversation with one of his family members because I was like, I am shocked. I don't know what to do in this moment. And that person said, Shannon divorced him.
His family.
Yes. I won't say who it is.
Right. No.
Someone in his family said, Shannon, you need to divorce him. Like he needs to just set you free. And I that sticks with me because that person saw or observed or whatever also felt like things were off.
They're supposed to be blindly loyal to their family.
Yes.
And what
Shannon walk away, brave, divorce him, let him set you free. You don't deserve it.
That's amazing. I can see what impact it has even to this day, because that's his side of the family. Again, supposed to blindly support him, but they were brave enough and cared about you enough to take your feelings into consideration. Because here's another thing that happens. There was stuff that happened, no infidelity. And again, he's not a bad guy. But when you divorce amicably, let me go back a little bit. A lot of people, when they get divorced, they cannot wait to trash the other party and lay blame. And it makes it even more difficult when there's kids because they can be used as pawns. The kids can be brought into the adult issues and they shouldn't. And that's one of the things that with my clients, I just have such a hard time with and want to help them not do that. But it's you have all this anger or guilt or jealousy or whatever it is. And it's so easy just to turn into this blah, 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 blah. You know what he did and just trash the other person. And it's it's harmful not only to them, but to us.
Yes.
And I know that you didn't do that.
No,
You
I was
were
embarrassed. I was so embarrassed.
Right. Because you thought it was a reflection on you, but you also are not the kind of person that kind of ran out spewing all this stuff. You handled it very respectfully,
Yeah.
whether that was a choice or just who you are down deep.
I think even maybe like subconsciously, I had actually deleted all of my social media because you just, again, you feel like the embarrassment of having to be like, you're married to this person on Facebook, right? And then at some point you're going to have to,
right? You
not
got to
be.
change that status.
There's so many times that I would see people on Facebook or Instagram and all of a sudden they stop posting pictures of their spouse and all of a sudden their name changes. And then all of a sudden, and it's like,
and all the pictures that
we all know what happened.
right?
And honestly, like, I just think at some point I was like, you know what, shit's probably going to hit the fan. So probably 6 months before everything got really, really bad, I had actually deleted all my social media because I was so embarrassed of how things like were in my marriage that like, yeah, it was just, I was completely embarrassed.
So you
for something that I didn't, like, again, I will always say I was never perfect in marriage, but when you get to infidelity, it's like you're embarrassed for something that you don't even do.
No, it really, I think, do you think that's a woman thing that we,
Yeah.
Because I know that when your partner has infidelity, it makes us feel less than.
Yeah.
Why am I not good enough?
Yeah. Why wasn't I good enough?
And then we find ourselves comparing to that other person.
Yeah.
And that in itself, and most people, or I've heard doctors or psychologists, and I can't quote anybody, and I'm not a doctor, so don't quote me, but they say it's not about you.
Yeah.
Him going there is more to do with him. But as women, number one, it makes us feel less than, and then creates all these other insecurities. But then we are ashamed because by telling somebody that our spouse stepped out, now they're going to look at us as less than.
Yeah.
Well, why weren't you good enough?
Yeah.
And then I feel like they're going to start sizing us up. Well, are you the right body type? Are you the right blah, blah, blah? Did you keep? And it's something that we have to try and overcorrect because there is nothing about you that's not amazing. I mean, you are beautiful or not, you are beautiful, but that really isn't what matters.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly there's all reasons that people cheat, a lot of men, because they aren't getting enough attention at home. And it's not even that we're not giving it to them. It's just not the butterflies that maybe used to, whatever it is.
Yeah.
It has zero to do with the way we look. And I'll say it again, it has zero to do with the way we look.
Yeah.
But that's the first thing that we go to.
Well, and that's like over time, that sort of transition into, I'm actually really embarrassed for both of them because I mean, there's so much that I want to blame her for, but at the same time, I can guarantee that he was probably lying to her just as much as he was lying to me. And so it's hard for me to fault her, but at the same time, it's like, I'm actually more embarrassed for them. I believe they're still dating at like currently, but it's like, but to start a relationship like that like, I feel bad for her. I feel bad for him that like, it's just you're starting on just a web of lies.
And a really, really rocky foundation.
Yeah.
I want to go back and just commend you because a lot of times when a spouse cheats, we are so angry and hateful towards the person they're cheating with.
Yeah.
When we don't know how they came to be there, if there was manipulation, if there was deception, if they thought he was single. Not that if they do find out that they're married, it's excusable. Yeah. But really, it's our spouse that we had the commitment with.
Yes.
They signed the marriage license. They stood at the altar. They made the promise. This outside person, which more often than not, we direct all this hate. And I have seen some crazy stuff in retribution.
I think she was fed just as many lies. And so it's like, how can I mean, of course, I think there is still a part of me that,
well, you're not going to be best friends.
No. But you mean, you have to be pretty stupid not to like really understand the real like situation. But at the same time, I'm like, the only person I can be mad at is him or disappointed in or whatever it is, because at the end of the day, like he had all the information. I just think that he was withholding a whole lot. I'm sure there was probably, I left her a long time ago. We're already divorced.
We've been separated for a year. I mean, but that's just very involved of you because it's so hurtful that and we are not our feelings. We have them, and what we choose to do with them is who we are.
Yeah.
But sometimes we cannot see past them.
Yeah.
And then you insecurity, anger, jealousy, hurt, all of that stuff. And it's like an emotional tsunami and people lose their minds.
Yeah.
And they do things that maybe is hurtful to others or that later they'll regret. But to sit here, and I know that it's been a while since you're divorced, but it hasn't been that long.
Yeah.
We're not 5 years out.
Yeah.
We're not 10 years out where you've had a chance to self-reflect. You have gone through this process and always conducted yourself with just such grace and really, and forgive me, everybody, forgive me. It's just refreshing that you are in control of your emotions. You still experience them. You still allow yourself to feel them,
Yeah.
but you don't project them on anybody else.
No, I try. I mean, I bless my family and my close friends, but yeah, there was like a lot of times that I wish that, I mean, because I had a very, very good relationship with my in-laws. And literally after that, we have not spoken one word to each other.
And that's got to be so difficult. It's the same way for mine. And I don't think that we had quite the relationship that you did. And certainly whatever family member was brave enough to tell you, do what you need to do. He needs to set you free.
Yeah.
To have that, it's family.
Mhm.
So you're not just, when you go through a divorce, you're not just divorcing that person, you're divorcing
the
their
entire
family. And like you're marrying them and now you're divorcing them.
Yeah.
And so, and it's most people feel like they have to pick sides or they don't want to cross that line, or they probably miss you just as much as you miss them, but they don't know how to navigate this thing. Or if they're going to upset him by reaching out to you or blah, blah, blah. And so it's so difficult.
I just have to leave it alone. I mean, that's just.
I do know that we had conversations in our coaching sessions that was a real struggle for you.
Oh, totally.
To get past. And
it still is.
Yeah. And
I mean, you can see me too.
I can see the impact.
I miss them terribly.
That's just the thing. When you love people and you're close to people, that love doesn't go away because you sign a piece of paper.
Totally.
Whatever that is. And so it's in any relationship when there's a breakdown.
Yeah.
And there's no contact. And I dislike the word closure because I think that people throw it around and there's not necessarily anything. I mean, our feelings just don't necessarily go away or follow the same timeline as the breakdown of any relationship. And so we're left struggling with what to do with them and how to get past it. And for you, the choice was to let it be, let it go, not reach out, because I think that you thought that might be a little more painful for you than not, or how would it be received?
Yeah,
and it just
awkward
wasn't something that you wanted to do.
Yeah. Well, and the family member that I spoke to basically had kind of said, because I said, you know, he's going to crash and burn. Like, I know his personality, and like, who was always the person that picked him up when, you know, I was always the person that was there, basically.
So you still felt responsible.
You know, shit's going to hit the fan, and I don't know how stable he's going to be, you know, like everyone's going to find out, blah, blah, you know, there's going to be rumors, you know, obviously his family's going to find out everything that happened. And he just, you know, had told me like, that's just not that's no longer your responsibility. Like, we'll be there for him. We're his family. We'll pick him up when he's down because that's what family does. But that he's no longer your burden.
But that's interesting. Looking at you now, we just talked about how that person said you need to divorce him. He needs to let you go. And that had great impact.
Yeah.
And you believe that. I can see that. But when he said he's not your responsibility, I don't see that it carried that same impact.
No.
And so I think something else I want to talk about for women and maybe men too. If you have been the one that's kept the other one on the straight and narrow and made sure everything was done and we're the responsible party and they kind of floated along and blah, 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 we still can feel a great sense of responsibility for their well-being after. For myself, I did too. I made sure that he was getting home from the bar okay. I still did his Christmas shopping, bought birthday gifts for him. I mean, reminded him of people's birthdays. This is months and years after the divorce. It was 5 years in, and I finally said, and certainly it got less with time, but I'm like, you could do it on your own. You could go to the store, you can shop. And how did you feel and how did you deal with that? Because you were so used to being the primary one who handled everything. There usually is one in the relationship that does the bills and the blah, blah, blah. And that was you. How did you handle it after?
I mean, there definitely came a point where it was like I was freed from that responsibility, and it felt like a huge weight off of my shoulders.
Okay, good.
But while you're in it, it's like you still have to be the responsible person to get through the divorce.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like when you do everything and you're basically having to put everything together, and I'm doing, Excel spreadsheets and this and that, and this is the banks and this is the cars and blah, blah, blah. And it was like I had to go into, I almost went into no emotion, like it's just business.
And that's how it needs to be.
And it was like,
Yeah.
I was a real bitch. Like, that's the best way I could say it is I just went in and just was like, this is how much we spend on you. This is how much we spend on me. Here's this, here's that. I want this out of my name. I want you to, you need to go get a new phone. This all needs to happen by Sunday at midnight. Like I just went into whatever I could do to get him out, because I just knew that it would drag on and on, because
It's left to his devices.
It left to his devices. And like, even the whole like divorce thing was so funny. So when we had this big blowout, whatever, I find out, a couple of days later, he gets his referral to you. Somebody knew somebody that got a divorce and had gone to you. And we had kind of already, I guess at some point he had said, I'll call the mediator. Like he made it very clear that he was going to file for divorce. And so we met in your office. And I think at that point we had already kind of figured out the big stuff,
right?
Like who would get the house, what was going to happen to the cars, what was our timeline, whatever. But, when it came, I mean, I'm sure you remember when it came time, we had to pay your fee.
Right.
He whips out his debit card like it's going to work. Because it's like, okay, he had taken the step to call you and that's all fine. But like, I'm the one that do all the finances. And so it's like, I had to take out my debit card and be like, no, I got it. Like, let me pay for it. I'm the one that brought the checkbook. So it's just like little stupid things like that I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to literally have to do everything for a divorce that I don't want.
Right.
And that was probably that was a hard pill to swallow.
And probably swallowing that pill once the divorce was final made it very easy for you to just let that roll go.
Yeah.
Because for mine, it was amicable. There was no great act. It just wasn't working. And so even though it was a divorce and I was emotional and lost my mind for the first few months after it, I still felt like, because I made the choice, even though he was fine. Men have this great ability to just, you tell them that course is changing and they'll just pivot and go that direction. Women, we are such emotional creatures that we can sit in those emotions and we're scared to pivot or we don't pivot. And so he just, turned and kind of started shuffling this way. And I'm thinking, well, you dropped this, or here, let me take care of that for you, or let me do this. And instead of being more concerned with what I was doing, I have a friend that I've known since I was 13 years old. We won't say how old I am, but it's a long time. I've known this friend. And he recently reached out to me and said, I'm getting a divorce. And I said, all right, come in, we'll talk about it. This man does not know how to pay a phone bill, who even the carrier for his phone is. He doesn't know how to write a check. He doesn't know how to use an ATM card. He owns a business, doesn't know what his business is bringing in, doesn't know how to do payroll. She took care of everything. And he ended up going back with her because he could not survive in the real world. Now, I hope they're happy. I haven't talked to him since. He's a really good guy, and maybe they were able to work some things out. But to be so dependent on someone else that you no longer have the option to divorce in your mind is just crazy. But there's always that one person who in a marriage is responsible for everything. The other one is blindly trusting that the money's in the account, that the bills are paid and that kind of thing. Yeah. And so when that's your role, it's really hard to let it go and just be like, they'll figure it out.
Yeah. I think that was just like the part of me that like I had to dig down deep, and it was kind of like you kind of dug your own grave. Like, like here's all the things I need you to do, and best of luck to you. Like you're kind of booting them, just be like, I literally packed up all of his belongings.
So you did the packing too?
Oh, of course. But I think it was more of just like, and maybe call it a control thing, but it was like, I honestly didn't want him in the house. I didn't want him looking around at things. I didn't want, I literally was like, I will pack up everything that I know to be yours, and I'll even overcompensate on the things that I don't know if it should be mine or yours, but I packed everything up and left it in the garage and was like in a nice, neat little pile.
So not only was it you felt like his timeline and yours were different in the way you both approach getting things done, but it also helped you because you got to be in control of that. And you were not selfish. There was no problem with the division of the furnishing. So
I was very
some people
nice.
who do that.
No, I was very nice and respectful with all of his things. I mean, just there was even, I'm sure some people would have like bagged up crap and throw it or whatever. But no, I was like, I don't know, what good is that going to do for me?
See, that's the thing.
I'm not going to break stuff. I took very good care of, there was like some family, there was some pictures and just some other like little family, like memorabilia, I guess you could call it. And it was like, I bubble wrapped it, put it in a nice box, like just because it was like that, I would expect somebody else to have done that for me, right? If the roles had been reversed, I still would have expected that my stuff would have been treated with respect.
You have no idea how often that is not the case.
Yeah, that's like
it is, people, I have
don't get me wrong, I would have liked to have thrown it all out.
Right, and it makes you feel good in the moment. But it's really how we conduct ourselves in a divorce that shows who we are. Now, again, I said I went crazy. I mean, it was difficult, but I never trashed him or his things. Mm-hmm. I never went around and badmouthed him. I've been doing this for 30 years in the family law industry. And people, everything's fine. And the weed whacker becomes this really important item when nobody's used the weed whacker in 15 years.
Yeah.
It's been sitting in the shed. It probably doesn't even work. The string's been missing, but all of a sudden they both have to have this freaking weed whacker. Yeah. Divorce is a business decision and needs to be treated accordingly. But it's the one thing in the world that is such an emotional thing. And we're saying, hey, stop. Check your emotions at the door. Yeah. Let's treat that. I mean, we're asking kind of the impossible. Yeah. So it's no wonder people freak out all the time. And, I've had people not want to give back photographs that aren't even of their family. The hell do you want those for? I mean, it's just crazy. But once you got past that and you packaged up and your timeline was not the same as his and you got through it and it was easier, it was more of a burden that the responsibility wasn't.
Yeah, it just was what are the things can I get rid of, push off, delegate so that he can exit my life in an efficient and timely way? Because, it's just like even the mail, just seeing the mail come in his name or just, pictures. And, that was probably like the first thing I did was take out all of the wedding photos.
I was going to say, I think we talked about that. We had a session about that. I just
didn't want to, it wasn't like I was, going into denial or anything, but it was like, why am I going to sit here full of things that remind me of our wedding or of our relationship? So it was like, that was like one of the first things I did was literally took all that down. My house had no pictures hung up.
It was pictureless for a little while.
Pictureless for a long time.
The whole world has changed. That chapter is closed. Yeah. So I understand taking them down. And you have to create a space that's now yours.
Because it just has to scream Shannon. Like it has to just be about like, if this is the house that I'm going to continue to live in, like for me to be able to get through that was I had to turn that like the emotion off and be like, I have to go like super sterile and just like, and that was the thing where I just was like, get your own phone, Bill, get your, get off. I literally, I think because I had access to everything, I like kicked him off car insurance. I mean, literally everything. I was like, here you go. Here's everything that I kicked you off of.
Yeah, you needed to really.
I really don't care where you go from here.
Right.
You don't have car insurance as of this day. It just was little things like that.
And gave him notice, and
of course.
He's fine. But you had to, because it's how would you be able to go out in this new part of your life, figure things out as a single person, and then come home to your marital home with wedding photos, it'd just be very difficult.
Totally.
So, and I remember when those came down and I remember the sterile and you took some time to really figure out what you wanted up on those walls, what would make you happy. And that's something, even with as small as pictures, it's really difficult when you go through that to figure out what makes you happy, what you
Yeah.
even like, what you even want to do, because
Yeah.
you've been part of a team or a couple, or it was what you guys wanted, what you guys liked. And then you have all this emotional crap happening. And then you're supposed to figure out, well, gosh, I think I like this, or I really want to do that. It's a difficult process. But now, this day, your house is full of pictures
Yeah.
and full of new memories. And I think you even went down to the comforter on the bed and the
Oh yeah.
everything.
And but I was very thoughtful about what, like when I took the pictures down, I put them in a place that I didn't have to look at them. We did a big thing with Christmas. We would exchange ornaments to each other. And I mean, I literally, like, it was one of those things where the box is actually still up like in the rafters because I'm just not ready, or maybe I am now. I'm fine with doing it now, but it just was one of those things where I put the picture somewhere, I kept the ornament somewhere, you know, until I was ready to deal with it.
Right.
And so little things like that, where, you know, I just did the name change. It was like, I was ready for it.
I love that you waited till you were ready.
Oh yeah.
And
I wasn't gonna do
didn't
anything rash. People
Right.
go crazy.
And
But
see, that's the thing. If you don't have to do anything,
no.
you know, except the things that you have to do.
Yeah.
So after the fact, when you're trying to figure out pictures and memories and that stuff, you don't have to do anything.
No.
You can do exactly what you did and tuck that stuff away until you can deal with it. I know that it's not the same, but divorce and death are similar.
Yeah.
My mom passed a few years ago, and my sister and I went in and we had to separate her stuff.
Yeah.
And I brought all of this stuff home. And I mean, I'm playing adult Jenga. There's just no space in the house for it.
Yeah.
And even though it's almost been 3 years, I couldn't do anything until I was ready to do something. I didn't want to do anything rash. And that's one of the things that we just act on impulse.
Yeah.
And then usually we regret it later. When people come in for divorces, or they're talking about they're just tired and they want the divorce to be over. And so they just don't care what the agreement says, they want to sign it.
Yeah.
I'm like, you can't do that. You need to do it in a way, even though it's painful now and you're tired, and I understand, take the time now, because 6 months from now, I don't want you regretting, or I should have, would have,
Yes.
could have.
Mhm.
And that's the hardest. I mean, but it's hard to see in that moment. I've been there where I'm just so tired of dealing with something. I just want it over at whatever
Mhm.
cost it is. And I think we're so used to emotional gratification,
Yeah.
instant gratification in this world. But I applaud you for taking the time, Shannon's timeline.
Yeah.
That is just huge.
Well, and I mean, even going like back to the dating thing, like just finding, you know, that there are a lot of, you know, men who are divorced. And I've asked like several of them, you know, if we're in a comfortable place in terms of like being able to like have those types of conversations, I've asked them, you know, what did you do with stuff from your wedding or whatever? And, you know, the answers would be very different. It was like, oh, I don't know, I just left everything there, you know, or, you know, somebody said, you know, I kept a small box of just a couple of things, and I just kind of put it away until I'm ready to deal with it. And, you know, or like, yeah, it's all, you know, in a bag in my garage. I mean, it's just like everyone deals with it differently. And so, but I think that helped for me to figure out, right, like, yeah, I have all this stuff that I need to do something with it at some point. But I also enlisted the help of some of my friends. And I said, some of the stuff that's a little bit harder for me to get rid of, I just need you to take care of it. And I don't want to know what you did.
I like that. One of the things that I've always loved for you is you've had such a strong group of girlfriends, such a strong
Totally.
support
Yep.
system. And I know that they have helped you tremendously. I mean, there have been other tools and other
Yeah.
things and a lot of work that you've done yourself. But having a support system can be huge.
Yes.
Our support system can lift us up or bring us down. And some people going through this don't have anybody, or
Yeah.
the other spouse's family was their support system. So for them, myself, a coach, a therapist, everybody needs somebody.
Yeah.
But I love that your girlfriends were trusted enough and such a good group of girlfriends
Yeah.
that they were able to follow that request
Yeah.
and just do it. And to this day, you probably have never asked them, what'd you do? And maybe one day you will, but I think it's probably just left your mind altogether.
Totally. And I think
Until I go bring it up, sorry.
No, but I think one of the unique pieces that also like helped was that with all of my friends, because I'm from the area, a lot of my friends were our friends. So it was like my ex did not bring really friends into the relationship, which I feel like now should have been a red flag. I feel like when guys don't
Those
have
are
friends,
so
it's
easy to
weird.
see looking back.
Yes, but I think it was also like an opportunity for me to, for all of my friends are still my friends. And so there isn't it wasn't even about picking sides. It just was like, these are the friends that I've had since I was, in high school and college. And
I love that. And that's a conversation for another day is picking sides and that kind of thing. But it's no matter where you are in the divorce process, it's difficult, whether you're thinking about the decision and you're struggling with it, whether you've just communicated to your spouse that you want it, and they may or may not be on the same page. It's very rare that two parties are on the same emotional page during a divorce, whether it's dealing with the aftermath after a divorce, and then even as simple as what do you do with the stuff? And so, those are conversations. Like I said, you had a wonderful support system. You had me.
yeah,
I love being a part of your ongoing journey. I'm here for anybody that needs help, but it's difficult. It's difficult at every step, and no way is the right way.
Yeah.
You just have to conduct yourself the best way that you can, and hopefully not regret the decisions that you make or when you lose your mind later. But control yourself.
Yeah.
The rest of this stuff is nobody's business, and do it on your timeline, unless there's, of course, a legal timeline that you have to meet. But I just want to thank you again for being with me today. And I love our conversations.
I know.
I
Get
love
yourself a
seeing
Lori.
you.
Get yourself a Lori.
Oh, thank you for that. You just make my day every time I see you. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but where you were from the day we met to where you are now, it just is inspiring. And it makes me just so happy to be a small little part. And I just adore you. And I thank you.
Way bigger part.
I thank you for coming here every Wednesday with
Of
me.
course.
Maybe next Wednesday
Yeah.
we'll have a more juicier topic.
Yeah.
But for now, we're going to say goodbye. If you are thinking about a divorce, whether you're struggling with the decision, whether you're in a divorce, whether you're post-divorce, and just need some help, my name is Lori Wood. I'm a certified mediator, certified divorce specialist, and I'm here to help. Give me a call at 916-616-6191 or check out my social media. You can contact me there, and be kind to yourself. Go out, have a great day, and just be kind to yourself.